was born here inside the United States of America to Mr. and Mrs. Gholson. I'm a 55-year-old black male. I'm here today to talk to every one of you and to tell you that solitary confinement is indeed torture. I want the world to know that not just myself have been tortured, but there are many men and women still to this very day, as you're sitting there listening to me now, are still being tortured inside all the prisons and jails around the United States. And there is no one doing anything about it, or to help them or to stop it. I'm not here to point the finger at anybody, because most policymakers just don't have any idea of some of the effects of the laws that they pass or support to be passed. So make no mistake about it. I'm not only going to show you and deeply explain to every listener just how solitary confinement is torture, and it has a long-term effect on the mind. I hope and pray that each member of Congress, the Senate, Governor, Mayor, House Speaker, Vice President, and the President of the United States, along with each and every American, that hears this message to stand up today. Stand up today to do everything in your power to help stop the torture of the men and women and children that's being locked away inside 5x9 concrete cells, 23 hours a day, for days, months, and even years on end. They are human beings. They are somebody's loved ones, and they all need someone to stand up for them and to protect their rights. Will you stand with me and others to stop the torture? I would love to one day talk to you and share with you what I truly witnessed, just as solitary confinement had driven a lot of men around me mad, crazy, and even insane. And it didn't take a year for anyone to notice the change in them individuals. The sad part was that it was the Federal Bureau of Prisons and the Department of Corrections staff handling and dealing with the insane, and just how badly and poorly the staff behaved and the attitudes, where every time they had a confrontation or had to deal with a man, a human, that had displayed some kind of mental illness, it was like officers were just there to hurt those men by using any kind of force that they believed was right. And by having this kind of attitude is why most mentally ill people end up dead, hurt, at the hands of the DOC and the Federal Bureau of Prisons. And for now, I'm going to talk about my own experience and the effects that solitary confinement had and still have on me. I first want to stand here before the whole world, shouting at the very top of my soul, saying, help me put a stop to this pain and suffering that's being caused by long days and nights that my fellow human beings is being forced to endure all over the United States. They have placed people inside all the county jails, prisoners, state and federal. They have placed in what's now being known and called solitary confinement, which is nothing more than a torture chamber. My very first encounter with solitary confinement, or the torture room, was in September of 1996, when I was first arrested by the Chicago police for a crime I didn't even commit. They took me to a federal lockup downtown Chicago, and 3 days later, I was slammed down in solitary confinement based on false statements that was given to the government based on my arrest. I was only off the street for 4 days, slammed down in solitary confinement like a dog. Never been in a room like that before in my entire life. But what did I know? I was in for a long ride. I never seen any doctors or specialists to see even if I was able enough to withstand solitary confinement. Solitary confinement had a strong mental effect on the mind of a lot of people. Like I said, the United States government started right away on torture. I just got inside the Metropolitan Correctional Center, and I didn't have any kind of mental issues or any write-ups at that time. I stayed locked down inside solitary confinement, the torture room, what I call it, from September of 96 to the following year of March 97. This was my very first time being tortured by the feds. Back in 99, I was sent to the United States Penitentiary in Florence, Colorado, on or about May the 2nd, 99. And this had been broke out on the recreation yard. And about a riot jumping off with 50 people, I'm the only one, again, was targeted and sent to solitary confinement. Back again, in the torture room, down in Marion, they sent me, United States Penitentiary, Supermax. The cells down there were so small that you could stand side by side and touch both walls. Look at my picture on Facebook or the solitary confinement page that I got up. The toilet is right there by your head. Depending on which way you speak, there's a picture of my cell on the wall on Facebook for all eyes to see. By 2001, I've lost 4 family members, and solitary confinement torture room was really taking its toll on me. I stayed there from 99 to 2003, and I was sent to the United States Penitentiary in Pollock, Louisiana. The staff there didn't like the fact that I wouldn't do their bid before or wouldn't bend over and just take whatever they wanted me to do. So they locked me up again and decided to teach me a lesson. In June of 2703, the staff sent me to Oakdale, Louisiana, and had me placed inside INS, an immigration center, solitary confinement unit. Yes, a damn integration center. My mother and father was born here in the United States, and so were my parents before them, and my grandfathers, and my uncles fought for this country, and they were military vets. And here I am, an American citizen being dehumanized by the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I filed many grievances as I could, and I even called lawyers. Nothing worked. I was surrounded by men that was being deported and sent back to countries wherever they was from. I couldn't even understand their language. I felt so humiliated and disrespected, and to see and witness how the ICE officers that treated those men back there was horrific, sad. It was heartbreaking. Them men weren't even from this country, but the men that supported this country, that was ICE agents, treated them men like dogs. As I sat inside the cell, torture room, isolated from the rest of the world, I just broke out laughing, saying to myself, those people is crazy. The Federal Bureau of Prisons, how could they even justify placing me inside the damn immigration center, solitary confinement unit? Inside ICE. Yeah, I was really on ICE for real. After almost a year, I was sent back to the United States Supermax in Marion, Illinois. Placed back again in solitary confinement all over again. As I sat there inside the small cell for yet 3 more years and some months, United States Penitentiary Mary had changed its custody level to a minimum. I was then shipped off to Terre Haute, Indiana, and placed on Terre Haute death row without a death sentence. Solitary confinement torture room again. Yes, this was crazy. How could the Federal Bureau of Prisons themselves even justify putting me on death row without a death sentence? Well, I tried to find out the best way I could. I started filing grievances and remedies, and I was shot down at every level. Now here I am sitting here, shaking my head in disbelief. I just couldn't believe that the Federal Bureau of Prisons just placed me up here on death row without a death sentence, locked down 23 hours a day again. This death row unit really took a serious psychological effect on me for 2 reasons. The first reason was because one of my close friends named Daryl Johnson was also a part of my case. He was sentenced to death, to die. I had to see this man every day, and just knowing he was going to be put to death had taken a toll on me. The second one was just seeing all the young men up there with gray hair all over their heads from stressing out. After I wouldn't stop filing these grievances to be removed off death row and placed on the Terre Haute United States Penitentiary yard, open yard, like everybody else. They came from Marion. Shit. I started filing grievances again. At least to be able to receive the very same privileges that the people on death row was receiving. Hell, I didn't have a death sentence, but they had more privileges than I did. Those remedies was denied as well. The following year, 2008, I was being shipped off death row and sent to the United States Supermax in Florence, Colorado, the 88th. When I arrived at the Supermax, I was placed deep down inside solitary confinement torture room again on the 8-man cell with Eric Rudolph, Ted Kaczynski, and Terry Nichols. All of them was bombers that had blew up things in places inside the United States of America. I just couldn't believe my luck. As days turned into months and months turned into years, the torture got no better. Many men had now started to lose their minds, banging on the thin toilets and showers, flooding the cells, throwing feces everywhere, cutting on themselves. They even started pushing razor blades and pencils and anything else they could find up inside their private part, just to get some kind of attention from the staff to get out of those cells. Just movement from the cells, from the cell block, that just moving from the cell block to the medical department was worth it to some of them men. At that point, they all have already lost their spirit in their minds. It's a very sad thing to see, and just being around some kind of activity, just being around this kind of activity can have a real serious effect on anyone. Like I had on myself, like it had on me. After filing yet more grievances to be moved out of the ADX solitary confinement, the Federal Bureau of Prisons decided to give me a due process hearing 10 years later. They had me locked down for over 10 years without giving me a hearing to be placed in any one of those solitary confinements. That hearing was a sham, just to get me to shut up. But I didn't. I kept filing it until one of my grievances made it to Washington, D.C. I asked for being illegal placed inside all those solitary confinements without ever being given a due process hearing. I asked for money. I asked for to be placed out of state. I asked to be given remedies. I asked for everything that I could think of that my mind could even imagine. At this time, I'm just tripping. I'm complaining about everything. I've been done wrong, and I wanted them to know it. So on December the 13th, 2012, my mother passed away. I was locked deep down inside the ADX segregation confinement unit. When the pastor came to my door and told me that I needed to call home because it was a death in my family, I was already drained. I called home and my sister told me that my mother had passed away. I almost died right then and there. The sad thing was the Federal Bureau of Prisons don't allow anyone to go to any family funerals. So I tried to pull myself together as best I could for my family, letting them know that I was okay and I was strong enough to withstand whatever was to come my way. Their father, their son, their brother, their uncle, their cousin was not insane. I was a man, and I was their hero, and I still am to this day. The day my mother's funeral, I pulled out a beautiful picture of her and surrounded it with pictures of everyone in my family. I had my own little service along inside solitary confinement. I cried so hard that the cell up on the tier all shook and vibrated. Everyone knew I was hurt. My tears were big like hail falling from the sky. I never cried like that before in my life. I was surely being tortured. I prayed to God and said, if this is your will, then let it be done. I love you, Lord. I said that over and over again. You know, things in my life was getting crazier. I tried to make sense of it all. I tried to make sense of all this and why all these things was happening to me. As I sat back, I drifted off into a half sleep. Crazy Kizzy Lewis was up there banging on the shower as hard as he could. Crazy Terry, he was up there screaming at the top of his lungs, like he lost his mind, like he always do. Everybody was going crazy, like it was a madhouse, like it always is. I fell half asleep, and some kind of entity came over me, and it took me to a very dark place. As my eyes adjusted to the place, I was inside a graveyard with this entity, the spirit, or whatever you want to call it. It took possession of my soul and my spirit. I opened my eyes as best I could, as wide as I could, and I could see thousands of graves that had all kinds of dates on them. They had names. The spirit, this entity, called out to the graves and said, with all the issues and problems that Jimmie is going through right now, which one of you up here on earth, in his graves, in his graveyard, is willing to trade places with him up on earth right now? As I looked on, I swear to you that As far as my eyes can see, all those graves just started popping up as in domino effect. From AB, from BC, all kinds of numbers. I slipped out of this trans when the officer popped my door to bring my food tray. From that day on, I never complained about anything again in solitary confinement. I just took it as it came. They brought me cold food, so what? I ate it. Cold water, so what? I took a shower. All the crazy bull crap that was going on the daily business didn't even faze me anymore. The two 15-minute phone calls that they gave me to call my family, hell, I was thankful for that. 1 hour a day recreation, I couldn't wait till the next day to go out the cell. My whole life had changed. I had a new outlook on life. I started praying to God daily, and just like that, it was all over with. Right after the passing of my mother and being locked down in solitary confinement for 23 hours a day for years, being tortured and suffered for no reason or without any kind of due process hearing or without violating any laws or policies inside the federal Bureau of Prisons, that same day, just like that, the officer stood outside my cell door and called my name. I got up off the bed and went to the door. It opened. He just looked at me with this funny, silly-ass smile on his face and said, "Mr. Gholson, pack your things. You're being transferred." I just looked at him and said, "To what unit?" I'm thinking he's talking about still inside the Supermax. He said, "You're being transferred to another prison." He then gave me a few bags to pack my property. I packed everything. It was so quiet up there because everybody was listening and you could hear everything that's going on. So when he said that, because everyone knew the only way you were leaving ADX is in a body bag, in a box, or somehow you got your case overturned, or you going to medical on a medical trip, or you might be going somewhere else. But those are very rare cases that you're leaving that place alive. Most of the men were crying, saying goodbye. Some were just choked up. Even the baddest of them all was glad to just see somebody make it off of there. Shit, still sane and alive. Damn, I made it. When I got down to receiving, they wouldn't tell me where I was going. All my property was already packed and boxed up. 2 hours later, some officers from out of state popped up at my cell door. And I asked them, where will I be, where I'm going? You know, they sent me everywhere else. Shit, hell, it could have been the moon. I don't know where the hell they was taking me to. They said, "We are here to get Mr. Gholson. Is that you?" I said, "Yeah." He then said, "Well, we're from the state of Colorado." And just like that, I was on my way in a van, on my way to being transported to the state of Colorado. And the cold part is they had a dog van to come and pick me up, put me inside of a dog kennel, and transferred me from the super maximum security prison to Denver, Colorado, to their Denver Reception and Diagnostic Center. This was on April 11, 2011. After I was stripped out, I was taken straight to solitary confinement yet again, another torture room. As days passed by, I started requesting to see someone that could tell me what the hell was going on. When they didn't come to see me a week, I told everybody down there that I needed to see somebody. I filed grievances. I started requesting for grievance papers. They gave me a hearing. I couldn't make my case to them as to why I shouldn't be inside of solitary confinement. They let me out on the Colorado Department of Correction Yard. I filed all these things. On 5/5/11, they gave me the hearing that I was requesting. The lieutenant did agree with me that I should not be kept in solitary confinement, and that was one of the reasons why the Federal Bureau of Prisons moved me out, so that I can function properly on a different yard in a different state. But the warden came around and said, "I don't know what you told them. I don't know who you think you're fooling, but you're not getting out of bag's egg on my watch." He sent me again to solitary confinement and sent me to the Colorado Department of Corrections Supermax, a unit that you have to have a violent crime to go to. I filed a grievance as soon as I got there. The warden there said, "I don't see no reason why you should be in accident." He then sends me to Sterling Correctional Facility, another maximum security prison. When I got to Sterling, They locked me in the egg again, solitary confinement, another torture room. Again, I filed grievances on that. It didn't last long, but the people came to see me and said, listen, Mr. Gholson, if you just do our program, we'll let you out on our yard. I didn't believe them. I thought they was full of shit. But I did the AFA program, and just as sure as hell, one day they came to my cell and told me, Mr. Gholson, you have done everything we asked you to do. You have done it with grace. Pack your things, we're letting you out of solitary confinement, and we're placing you on our yard. Now, at this time, I truly believed that the torture was over for me. I was so very wrong. The mental effects that I started to encounter after my release from solitary confinement is still ongoing to this day. Some days I can function, and sometimes it's very, very hard just to stay focused on some small little things. I've lost my will to even try to focus sometimes. I often find myself sleepy and very fatigued, if you will. I was prescribed some pills called neurotics. The medical department said that they were for mental health. Now I've been diagnosed as having a mental health issue based on the torture of solitary confinement. I decided to wean myself off these pills and try to do as best I can without them. The very day that I was released from solitary confinement, I was sent to a housing unit, Unit 2. The officers had given me a band to put on my wrist, so all offenders know what unit you belong in. The officers called for chow, and I got off my bed and went to chow with some guys I had just met. I got dizzy as hell. Just walking to the chow. I'd never been free of walking freely like that in over 13 years. The floor lifted up on the outside concrete outside as I walked. When I got inside the kitchen and sat at a dinner table for the first time in years, the floor in the kitchen lifted up. The room jumped up and it started spinning. I was having a panic attack. I didn't know what the hell was going on. So I jumped up from the table, walked to the tray slot. I threw my food tray down the slot and rushed out the door. People looking at me, and some didn't care because they didn't know what was going on. They didn't know that I was having whatever it was that was happening to me. I wasn't sure. So I got outside where no one could see me. So I went up the sidewalk until I got in front of Unit 2, which is where I was supposed to go. Now, remind you, there's only 2 units on this yard. I wasn't sure which unit that I came from. I just lost the train of thought just that quick. Guess what? I picked the wrong damn unit. I walked all the way down to Unit 1. Went in there, started looking around, and I just couldn't recognize anything or anybody. So I turned around to go back out of the door. But the officers up at the gun tower was seeing me. They locked me in the motherfucking solid port where I couldn't get out. They sent for officers to come down there, and they did. They came and got me, grabbed me, and told me to let them see my wristband. When I showed them the wristband, it was a different color from the band of the people in that unit. So right then and there, I was out of bounds. They told me to turn around and cuff up. Now, I ain't been out of ISA 24 hours, and I was on my way back just that quick for a simple prison rule violation, just like that. So when the police took me in the office, he said, "What are you doing over here?" I said to the man, looked him dead in his eyes, and said, "Man, I'm not going to lie to you. I'm lost. I just got out of Ag Fig, and I don't know where I'm at." The officer picked up the phone and made a phone call as to talking to whoever he was talking to. He began to laugh as he pushed my ID number into the computer. He started laughing so hard that it wasn't even funny. He did say to me, "Hey, you in Unit 2, you don't supposed to be down here." He took me out in the hallway, showed me where Unit 2 at, said, "See that big sign? It got Unit 2 on the wall. That's the unit you belong to. That's the unit you stay in." Now, those are the effects of solitary confinement. But what I want to do now is ask all of you all that's listening to me to please just close your eyes and open your hearts and minds, because it's not about me anymore. I done already been tortured and did my time in solitary confinement. Now I want you all to just sit there and think of how the zookeepers treat and take such good care of animals. When the animal is sick, the zookeepers call in the very best veterinarians and will spend millions of dollars on any one of those animals at the zoo to save his life. Look at each animal. Look at their diet. Look at what they feed them. Fresh vegetables, fresh fruit. Depending on the animal, he get exotic things to eat. And they took such good care of those animals. Then I want you to visualize the men and women and children here inside the United States. Human beings throughout this country that has constitutional rights, due process rights, and they have human rights. How can we, as human beings, that's supposed to have love and compassion for one another, just sit back and let our fellow human beings be tortured 23 hours, 24 hours a day, daily, like they're nothing? You see, there's not just sitting back inside the cells claiming that they are having real serious mental issues. Those people are really deserving doctors. You see what I'm saying? Don't get them the federal government and the state prison system. They don't give them no doctors. They don't give them the best care. Their life is meaningless. Don't mean nothing to them. What happened to any one of them that act out? I'll tell you what happened because I've seen it for myself. Officers called in for backup, and with their 6 or more officers standing outside one of them people door, men or women or children, that's mentally ill, that have the effect of solitary confinement. Now, this person is really broken. He or she is affected and still trying to get the attention of the officers, even as they're standing outside that door. They're pleading and begging with these people just to listen to them. They don't want no problems. They already hurt. They probably got feces and everything else spread all around their cells. They got no clothes on. I'm talking about they lost it. But the word is given. The door is open. They shoot spray, mace. They force their way in on a person. They put them in chokeholds. They shoot them with tasers. They fall back and let them suffer from the effects of the spray for 3 to 5 minutes, let them choke. Then they run in on them and knock them down to the ground. Old men, old women, young kids is being treated like this. Their arms and legs is being pulled and four-pointed until they get cuffs on them. Every which way you can imagine it, these people are suffering. They are hurting. And the guards sit there with their little smirks on their face, thinking their job is not to help these people, but to get the situation under control. Well, how do you do that? You get the situation under control by giving the people the proper medical care that they deserve. Give them the proper attention that they deserve. Give them the proper food and bedding that they deserve. They are human beings. The citizens of this country, like I said, the animals in the zoo are being treated and taken care of better than our own humans. And the question is, or the question should be, ask yourself why. You'll never get fresh food in solitary confinement. You'll never get a hot tray in solitary confinement. And depending on where you're doing your time at, your water is brown. Just like the activist Cassandra is saying in the earlier message, please take the water to State Bill Correctional Facility because those people's water is brown. Water, drinking out of a sink. Now you telling me we are the most powerful country in the world. We can put people on the moon, but you can't give a human being clean water? You got these people in prison against their own will, whether they did the crimes or not. You have to support them. You have to take care of them. They're doing the time already. You telling me that you can't give them clean drinking water? Animals at the zoo, like I keep on rephrasing back to my animal friends, but that just what solitary confinement does. Train them into being the new modern day animal. You want to treat them like animals, you turn them into animals. You drug them with these pills and shit that they really don't need just so the pharmacist can get a paycheck, and you turn them into what they act like. But I know better. We all know better. They're not animals. They're somebody's mother, grandparents, father, son, sister, nephew, niece. They're somebody's loved one. They have a family out there that don't know and don't have an idea because of the policies that's in place. They don't know and don't have an idea of how you are treating their family members back there. If nothing else, you should treat them like you would want somebody to treat your own family. And they deserve to live a good, healthy life without being tormented, tortured 23 and 24 hours a day. This is solitary confinement. It's sad to say, but if we just raise the level of care for all people inside solitary confinement around the country, around in the state system and the federal system, to the same level that we treat our animals, that we have for the animals in the zoo, we all will be in a much better place. With that being said, please, people, don't stop fighting to demolish solitary confinement around the country. Solitary confinement is the new enemy, and it must be stopped and it must be defeated. You know, I talked a lot about my situation, and I can go on and on. But right now, I'm so compassionate about helping somebody else. Mine don't even matter right now. I done been tortured. I done been in the worst that the United States government has to offer. They just sent me illegally to their death row unit. They just sent me illegally to their immigration centers. They just sent me illegally to both of their super maximum security prisons, rubbing elbows with some of the worst men in the world. And I just have a non-violent drug case. And I'm waiting on the judge to release me now. Everybody on my case is gone. For some reason, they still want me to torture. They still want me to suffer. They still torture me. The president signed a bill called the First Step Act. All my co-defendants is home right now. All of them. And some of my co-conspirators on different cases, 4 and 5 life sentences is already on. I got 1 life sentence for a nonviolent drug act. My motion for the First Step Act is on the judge's desk, and it's been there for over a year and a half. When it only takes 60 days for a judge to rule. Why? Why? Why haven't my judge sent me home to my family? I don't know. I hope and pray that each and every one of you senators, congressmen, governors, House speakers, vice president, and the president hear my message in order to end to solitary confinement as soon as possible, because it is torture, and we as human beings can do better, so much better for our citizens inside this country. So let's make demolishing solitary confinement torture room one of our very first priorities throughout the country. I thank you all for listening. I thank you all for your time. If there's anything else you need to hear from or know from me as far as solitary confinement, please don't hesitate to contact me. Mr. Cassandra Greer has all my information, and you can find me on my website, Mr. Jimmie Gholson. Thank you.